Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sean Elwood, and welcome to the Sony Alpha Livestream, episode 5, where we are tackling travel. Today, I am joined by three extremely talented travel photographers with different specialties, different areas. So it's going to be a really fun deep dive into travel photography. Some great tips on how to get the most out of your travel photography, and of course, some great chances to look at some amazing photos. So, without further ado, I'm going to invite the gentlemen onto the stream. First up, from Sydney, Australia, one of our Sony DI advocates, I have Andy Yee. Welcome to the stream.
How you doing?
Good, mate. Yourself?
Good, thank you. Nice to be here.
Good. Next up, I have Pat Kay, who is joining us from Tokyo.
Hi, thanks for having me. Super stoked to be here.
My pleasure. Thanks for coming on. I understand it's swelteringly hot there.
Extremely. I need to crank this AC. It's creeping in slowly.
I cannot. I'm not. I have zero envy right now.
Yeah,
normally I'd be like,
totally right.
take me to where you are, but no, I can't handle Tokyo summer.
Not in summer. Nah. I feel
Next up, we have Sony Alpha Ambassador Stefan Harworth joining us from New Zealand. How are you, mate?
Good. How are you guys?
Good, mate.
Awesome.
Awesome to have everyone on stream. So look, we'll whip around and get everyone introduced for those who are not familiar with you gentlemen. Andy, tell us a little bit about yourself in the world of photography.
So I specialize in travel photography workshops, and I end up teaching workshops around the world, usually when we don't have the current situation. Should be in New Zealand right now teaching workshop, but we'll see, when we can get everything back on track.
And you've got obviously Oman's one of your big destinations. Where else do you take people in the world?
Morocco, Jordan, New Zealand. Should be in Fiji next month, but not Japan.
It's pretty all over the place.
Yeah, I'm fortunate that these days I can go to places that I want to actually go to. So it's it's taken a while to get to this point, but I enjoy what I do.
It's a good way to be. Stefan, tell us a bit about yourself.
So I've been doing photography, I think maybe 12 years now, commercially, and so what I'm doing now is pretty much creating or trying to travel around and create authentic stories. I've not really got too much idea of what those stories are, but it's trying to just find them as I go. Sometimes it's through climbing mountains and doing adventures that way, or trying to travel and find other cultures. So recently I've traveled to Mongolia, which I'll be covering later tonight.
The shots from that look amazing.
Yeah, cheers. But yeah, so that's kind of what I do as a Sony ambassador, and take imagery and try to create some of my most favorite imagery as possible. So yeah, and hopefully you guys enjoy that.
Very cool. Pat, tell us a bit about yourself.
So I'm a travel photographer that kind of shoots everything: landscapes, cityscapes, street portraits, the whole shebang. Kind of known for more of my Japan stuff because I love Japan, and that's where I find myself like half of the year most of the time. I do travel guides and articles and blogs and stuff on my site as well. And yeah, just traveling around, trying to capture people, places, and cultures, and document them all.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I always think your stuff has like such a distinctive look to it as well. Like I feel like I see a Pat Kay shot and I kind of, I don't know, like it. I know often who's shot it. Yeah, it's a good way to
that is the ultimate praise in my eyes. So thank you.
Right. Well, look, guys, we're going to jump straight into a bit of news. Not a big news week this week. A lot of stuff out there, but I kind of want to keep it a little bit travel focused. But I did want to throw up this story that I thought was really interesting, which was on Time Out Hong Kong. They had a big batch of photos from a guy called Mike Cousins. Let me just share it up here for you. Yeah, some old film photos from they're film photos from the 1960s. But just such an interesting spin on travel photography. Obviously Hong Kong is an awesome location for photography and for travel photography. But yeah, like a really unique take on, I guess, not so much unique, but uncommon to see these days to have that, more of a historical view and see the way the place was, back now 60 years ago almost. Yeah, it's wild. And Hong Kong as well, being a place that has changed so much in that time. Yeah, I don't know. Have you guys shot much in Hong Kong?
Yeah, I've been to Hong Kong like 4 times. I love Hong Kong. So it's great looking at what Hong Kong was actually like, before the Hong Kong that I know it now, which is, well, not anymore full of neons, but, nightlife and really islandy and all that kind of stuff. Really, really cool.
So there's not so much of the neon these days?
Nah, they did this big like city cleanup because the neons were like falling down onto the street or something like that.
Oh, damn.
Because they're getting really old and all that kind of stuff, and the fluorescents that they were using are dangerous and all that kind of stuff. So they're changing them all to LEDs and redoing the brackets and all these kind of things.
Right.
But it's kind of lost like this classic like Hong Kong neon vibe thing.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you kind of feel like, Hong Kong, Tokyo, like, I don't know, I feel like the neon's part of the, like, if you went to Shinjuku and like there wasn't just an absolute ton of neon, you'd be like, what happened? What is this place?
Where am I? This place looks the same as everywhere else.
Yeah, awesome. Anyone else sort of traveled much in Hong Kong? Andy, you been?
Yeah, I've been a few times and I've photographed a few festivals there as well. So Hong Kong is just an absolutely fantastic place. Like,
pretty iconic.
It's an urban jungle. It's an urban jungle that is Tokyo is its own sort of like theme, like on its own style. But Hong Kong is just, it is wild, and I do miss it.
I always am fascinated when people talk about Kowloon Walled City, which was gone before I was born, but it just seemed like such a completely wild place. Yeah, it's a shame I never really got to go and check it out.
But like even like the modern day version of that would be like the Chungking mansions on Nathan Road. So yeah, like it's just a massive place.
All right, well, gentlemen, I'm going to stop talking about my funny little special interest story, and we'll get into looking at some actual pictures from talented photographers that we have on stream. So maybe look, I'm just going to go around from top to bottom here. So Andy, can I put you on the spot first, and we'll take a look at some shots of yours?
Sure.
Champion. I've got your screen. I'm not seeing much here. Maybe give that another spin.
You want me to close it down, or?
Yeah, I might need to. I don't think I'm seeing anything on that feed. We've got a question from Mark while we're waiting. He says, there'll be a travel bubble initially when some countries will open their borders earlier. Are you guys going to adjust your work locations in order to travel? You think you'll go different places just to kind of get moving?
Yeah, I'll start. So being New Zealand, there's talk that we may open our borders up to Aussie, so we might be seeing a lot of each other. But being that I haven't planned anything, but I'm pretty much traveling all around, my local, so my own backyard through the mountains and that sort of thing. So I was hoping to get up to Northern Territory, to Arnhem Land in July. So all kind of plans like that have been postponed, but that might be back on the cards if we do open our Trans-Tasman bubble. But anything in the long run, it's kind of unknown. So any jobs like that, it's off the cards. But that's, I know it might be similar for you guys, but yeah, it's pretty much your own backyard and re-explore what you've kind of ignored in a way.
It's pretty rough for you, mate. There's not much to photograph around Queenstown, is what I understand.
Nah, I've had to leave the place. But yeah, so I'm actually one of my mates' rooms because we opened our borders. Oh no, sorry, we went out of lockdown level 3 into level 2. So my uncle told me, "Hey, I'm going up to Nelson. Do you want to come with me?" And that was Sunday night. So yeah, I jumped in the truck Monday morning, and here we are. So I was just on the beach having a campfire and forgot my phone, so I couldn't even do the live chat. So I was like, "Wait, mate, what? Can I come into your room and do this?" So if someone comes in, I'll apologize right now.
All good.
I don't know, you guys.
Pat, Andy, you guys got immediate plans to get out of the country? Anyone else? Oh, hang on, here we go. I think we might have something from Andy. Pat, I got something, but I don't think it's what we want. That's definitely not what we want. You know what? I'm going to put someone else on the spot while we have some technical difficulties in the background. So maybe, Pat, do you want to throw something up for us?
Sweet. Yeah, I was going to throw. I was just going to go through just a little bit of my work and what I do, and then maybe a quick edit, if that's cool.
You beauty. Let's do it.
Cool. So can you see my screen?
I recognize some of these shots. Yep,
yeah, these are some of my favorites. So as a travel photographer, I love being able to shoot a whole bunch of different categories, from really minimal stuff to street images and all that kind of stuff. And and so what I wanted to share with you was maybe like a quick edit on this one, and just quickly go through some of my process of what I'm thinking about when I'm editing something from RAW, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, do that.
This is your castle on a lake up in sort of northwestern Kanto, yeah?
That's a different one.
Okay.
This one is actually Osaka Castle. During cherry blossom season. I shot this, I think it was last year or something like that. We managed to get really lucky with like the timing and stuff like that. There was just a bunch of sakura everywhere, and it was amazing. But yeah, for this one, I shot it on the A7R3 with the 1635 GM. 3200 second, just because the sun was coming up, 2.8 because I wanted the bokeh, and then ISO 100. But if we reset it, let's see, the original kind of looks like that. So I'll just get rid of this. And yeah, so I'll go through and edit. So yeah, the first thing that I typically do is crops and restores and transforms. So I've actually reordered my lens corrections up here to the first thing that I actually do. And then I move into crops straight away, just kind of thinking about how I want to structure the image so that I can do what's called what I call shaping light, which I'll go into in a little bit. But for this image, I just want something simple. So maybe just line up the castle on the third, just crop it like that. Super simple. For this one, I don't have to do any transforms. Usually I'll do some vertical transform just to make things a little bit more true to life and not so distorted, like perspective wise. Maybe I'll just give that like a -4, just so that everything is in shape and ready to go. And I'm just going to whiz through this, by the way. So next thing I'll typically do
for me, Pat, would you ever shoot with a perspective control lens? Is that something that you're interested in, or it just never really, you just do it all in post?
I just do it all in post. I mean, I could get like a tilt shift lens, but being a travel photographer, I kind of have to I live out of it. Yeah, autofocus is nice. But also I have to really be cognizant about what lenses I bring. So like I
Mm.
live out of a 20-kilo suitcase in a backpack, right? So bringing a tilt
Right.
shift lens or something like that is like I have to kind of weigh it up whether I'm going to use it all the time and all those kind of things. So I need a lot of versatility.
Yeah. Yeah.
In this
Makes
case,
sense.
yeah, yeah, uh, yeah. Feel free to jump in if you have any more questions, of course.
Mm.
And then yeah, the next thing I'll typically do is like a baseline exposure grade. So whether I always shoot under, in this case it's just a wee bit under. So I'll up the exposure probably half. Quickly press J so I can see clipping. There's nothing clipped in here, which is fine. And I'll just adjust that to taste with highlights
Are
and
you really
whites.
militant about clipping, or are you just like good to know, but like,
Good to know. In actually in some of my other images like this, I have a real big tendency to overblow highlights, just because I kind of like the look. It's just something a little bit different.
What do you do?
And
What do you
sometimes
do when you're shooting in snow?
sometimes it's just completely overblown, and sometimes I blow it out on purpose. So
mm,
like this one,
Yeah.
for example, where you know like kind of looks this is the original, and then like I'm blowing out all the stuff on purpose just to lose all the detail, so it's like really minimal.
mhm.
So it's a
Yeah, that's
technique.
great.
It's a little bit of creative editing, but
I think that
yeah.
people get really thingy about blowing highlights in digital because it can look so ugly. Like I think
Mm,
digital files have this tendency to like just smash into the highlights, and then it
mm,
looks, you can see this kind of bald patch on the image where it's gone. But if
exactly.
you're going to lead into it and it's a soft transition, then it's all
Yeah,
right.
it's all about like the gradients and the transitions into it. As long as it looks smooth and it doesn't look like a massive hotspot or something, then
Mhm.
it's kind of fine. Um, but yeah, so coming back to this, the primary deal for me right now is to actually get all the detail and the image to a point where it's pretty flat. Um, just so that I can control. I love to control contrast with the tone curve. So the objective for me in the basic tone is just to get it flat, and then I'll skip straight to the tone curve, do my S curve, and then start adjusting my contrast. So I'll just do a basic one. And this is too hard for me, but just for the example, what I love to do with the tone curve is actually like give a faded look. So I actually clip the blacks down here and I clip the whites up there. And this means that I can actually like go hard on the highlights without them hotspotting too much.
Mm.
In the context of this image, though, it's a little bit too hard. So I'm actually gonna just flatten things out a little bit more. I don't want so much contrast. Maybe something like that will do. I'll have to gamma a little bit more as well. And this is all just playing around, different for every single image. From there, I typically do color. So I always pump up vibrance and then leave saturation for now and then adjust it a little bit later. I do that because like Lightroom is actually smart with the vibrance, and it's not like saturation where it's just all the things. It's actually got some smarts behind it.
Mhm.
But one of the biggest things is adjusting the white balance. So I like cooler tones typically. But for this one, I'm just going to go a little bit warmer because I want the sakura's to pop out a little bit more. And I kind of have a thing against green. Sorry if anyone likes green, but I'm just going to reduce that down.
Sorry, the Wachowskis.
Some
Little
people are
Matrix
really into
reference there for
green.
you.
So with all of that, I'll just quickly change these colors to what I typically go for. So what I'm trying to do is like align the hues together. So all of like the warmer hues kind of mesh into one another if I can. And then having the blues contrast or the cooler tones contrast the warmer tones if I can as well. So even like pushing purples up to blue, because most of my edits in color palette, it's actually, it's a lot cooler than most.
So
From
just for people
there,
who aren't familiar with like the hue sliders, like what you're doing there is you're pushing certain colors, more up or down the spectrum just to sort of finesse, like, I don't really want to see any green. So everything that's green is either going to be yellow or it's going to be blue, but it's not going to be green.
that's right. So I'm trying. So the thing about color for me is that sometimes, like, I try and minimize and simplify everything when it comes to my shots. So composition, color, even the tools and techniques that I'm trying to use, I'm just trying to simplify everything. So that even means color palette. So typically I'll only have like a blue and then a single warm color, and then that's kind of it. So that just makes, for me, the composition a little bit more unique and a little bit more, I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's less true to life, but at the same time, it's a little bit more like opinionated, which is kind of what I like.
Yeah, well, I mean, every snapshot's true to life, right? Doesn't make it good.
Yeah, exactly. A big thing for me is actually luminance, so controlling the lights and the darks of those colors, like how light and how dark those things are, especially for greens. So like down here in the bottom left, I usually go dark all the way and then kill the saturation just so that I can kill it as much as possible. I'll kill it even more later on, don't worry.
I was worried, but thank God.
And then typically split toning is something that I use a lot for my overall cool look. So I typically have both highlights and shadows in a cooler tone. So one thing you can do here is actually hold on to Option, and you can actually slide through the different colors for that tone, which is really useful. For me, I tend to go a little bit darker on the shadows and then a little bit lighter blue on the highlights. And these are super subtle, right? So, it's just that. I don't know if you can tell the difference there, but I'm turning those on and off. Something super, super subtle. And then from there, what I want to do is assess. So I've done a bunch of changes. I go back to it. I look, how's the color? For me, the color is like, it's not too bad, but I can actually pump this. If I pump this vibrance just a little bit, notice that the area in the top right pops out just a little bit more, but then I can also drop down the saturation just so that it doesn't look comical and still a little bit true to life. And that's Lightroom doing like smarts with the vibrance and picking up areas that are a little bit difficult to grab with the HSL sliders on their own. And so from there, say if I've like done my color, I'll check it and see how it compares to the original by pressing the pipe key. And it's not too far from, the original. It's just got a little bit more tones that I like. One thing that I want to do though is accentuate the sucker a little bit more. So I'll just pump up the yellows and the oranges, just like that. And then, yeah, that looks good to me. Cool. So from there, I will start adding effects and then doing what I call shaping light. So one of the effects that I do first is clarity. So a lot of people like to go plus clarity. I find that's a little bit too hard for the look that I am going for. I'm really inspired by, anime and that kind of Japanese vibe, and they always have like a really soft look to all the imagery, and I love that. So most of the time I'm at -30 and below negative clarity. But at the same time, because just because I like the dreamy look, but at the same time you lose detail in a lot of different areas of the image, and so I'll just pump a little bit of texture to get that back, just like that. And these are things that you
reveal
won't
my
be able to
ignorance here.
tell.
Like I haven't used Lightroom in a little while, in a big ways, and I'm not really familiar with texture. Is that like just a finer toothed version of clarity?
It's a finer tooth version. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's actually new, but it's like it's used for like micro contrast most of the time. So it's really good for things like portraits, for example, where if you use like if you use minus texture, you can get rid of like the over detailed pores in a face or something like that.
I wouldn't know anything about
that. But in this instance, it's counteracting the loss of detail that you get with negative clarity. And so I just want to grab that back a little bit. We're going to sharpen it up later as well, but just for now, that's that. Yeah, and so from there, I'm looking at effects like vignettes. So usually I put just a little bit. I'm not too heavy on a vignette kind of guy. Just that will do. Yeah, that looks good. Because what I do instead is this idea of shaping light. And this, what I am referring to when I say that is, every single image for me always has a very strong singular subject. And so it's about how do I like accentuate that in the best way that I can without it being too overbearing or overpowering. And so in this instance, I shot this deliberately with the branch leading into Osaka Castle. And so I want to really pop Osaka Castle out as much as I can. And so the first thing that I actually do is just throw like a really feathered radial just around the subject area like that. And I up the clarity on that to get a little bit of texture, a little bit of focus, a little bit of sharpness back into the image. And then maybe drag the exposure in some cases. In this case, it's not too bad. Maybe a little bit more. And one of the other things that I'm doing here is thinking about, okay, does the eye get led to this subject? And if it does, then that's great. If it needs more, some other things I can do is also up the saturation on that part as well. Anything that causes more attention to the subject and pops it out a little bit more. So I'll do that. But then another thing I want to do is also play with the available light that I've shot. And so all the available light's actually coming from the left. And so what I will typically do is try to accentuate that the best I can. And so I'll replicate where the light is coming through and then even add a little bit more light to it, maybe via a negative dehaze, just because it like flattens everything out. And then a little bit of plus exposure like that. And then I'll actually further accentuate that by duplicating and then doing the reverse. And so if I go invert and then I press O so that you guys can see where I'm doing it, like that, all this green area is what's going to get affected. And so I'm just going to drop this down like so that I'm really pointing and directing the light towards the castle. So I might even do that. Kind of like this. And so looking from the original into the edited version, it kind of looks a little bit more direct. But I typically would do a little bit more and add even like a grad filter down there and then kill any of the detail that I don't need to look at in the scene. So for example, all this foreground stuff down here, I don't really want to draw like attention to. And then this green guy over here, we're gonna get rid of him like that, just because I don't like green. And so now we've got this color palette of like blue, some like warm pinkish orangish tones, and that's kind of it. The second thing I'll do in terms of accentuating the subject is actually do a little bit of painting. And so for me, painting is just up the clarity. Maybe I'll turn up the whites a little bit. And I'm trying to accentuate the sun on this side of the castle. Maybe just like that, super subtle, nothing too special. And then I'll add a different brush and then sort of accentuate the shadows so that the entire castle is like really contrasty. And so this is the kind of the level of detail that I'll typically do for pretty much every single image. I do a lot of brush work and a lot of like local adjustment work, just so that I can make things a little bit more dynamic and more poppy, I guess. And so, yeah, now we've got something that really stands out. And from there, I'm actually pretty okay with that. I'll probably adjust the crop just a little bit, just to make the castle a little bit nicer. And that's kind of it.
So you shot this on a R Mark III, you said, yeah?
Yep.
So, obviously you're pushing around your pixels a fair bit here. Like, how much do you find having a camera with, a stack of dynamic range is, a factor for you? Like, is this something that you would feel, like, do you think you'd be able to do this sort of thing if you were using, I know you shoot a lot on a compact, like, can you push those files around the way you're pushing this one around?
Yeah, to a certain degree. So for example, this one was shot on the RX. This was shot really, really far away. So 72 millimeters, I think, is the furthest, or close to the furthest. But again, like, I'm pushing all of these details and I'm pushing all these shadows and all this kind of stuff. And the original kind of looked like that. So this is like a huge day and night difference, right?
It's a heavy grade.
Heavy grade, but I like the drama. But you'd be surprised how far you can push these files. And I don't know how many exact stops of dynamic range the RX has, maybe like 12 or 13 or something like that.
I don't think we quote a number. You could look at a third-party site.
Yeah. But you can do a lot with it. Especially when you start to know Lightroom really well. And then if you start getting things like distinguishing whether or not things are color grain versus like just normal grain, you can start to reduce things with the correct sliders and knowing what those things do. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the edit. Yeah. And
I'll just see if we've got any questions from the chat, because I know that I had a bunch of questions as we were going. But here we go. Any of you gentlemen, Brett Harris is asking, do any of you gentlemen use Capture One as well as using Lightroom?
I delved into it. Oh,
sorry.
We got the tunnel for a second there.
I delved into it for a little bit about 5 years ago, but Lightroom's kind of been sweet ever since. And I don't know, I'm kind of a little bit nervous of what I show in my editing style, because it's not really to that sort of level. So I don't really need that sort of editing. But yeah, Lightroom's pretty sweet on what I do. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I know. To me, it seems like people tend to settle into an edit suite and get comfortable with it. I think a lot of the time it just comes down to what feels comfortable, what you're used to. I mean, you can see from the way Pat edits, there's enough to learn, and if you've learned all that in one thing, it's a real pain to have to start from scratch when you switch over to the new hotness.
Yeah, 100%. I did try Capture One for a little bit just to see whether or not it was a workflow that could work for me. And to be honest, like it could. I mean, but yeah, like you mentioned, Sean, and like you have to unlearn everything and then relearn everything in order to get to the same level. So it's kind of like, how invested are you in the current system and all that kind of stuff. That being said, I do use Photoshop every now and then. I don't use it a lot for like manipulations or anything like that, but just to know how to grade, like color grade in Photoshop is a big deal, just because the way you grade in that is a lot different to Lightroom, and you get different results in that way.
Yep. There's a food photographer that I'm worked with in the past. I'll probably ask him on stream sometime soon, but he's all Capture One, and the way he shoots is it's for magazines. He needs to throw it onto layups, that sort of thing. I think Capture One's a different tool in a lot of ways. Like, it's designed for pre-press, for studio capture. Lightroom barely had tethering tools for a long time, whereas Capture One's always been like very much about, we're shooting tethered, we're on a studio stand, we're trying this stuff against layouts, all that sort of thing. So yeah, different tools, I think, for different jobs.
Oh, pause. If anyone from Adobe is ever watching, please speed up the import process, because it's rubbish. Yeah, please. It's just so slow.
All right.
Sweet.
I'm going to, Andy, if you're ready now, maybe we'll get you to jump in, yeah?
Sure.
Beauty.
Is that
Where are we? Yep, it's looking good.
So this is the marketplace in Nizwa in Oman. And I thought I'd tie in my images today with not just travel photography, but street photography, because that's what you've got me judging for Alpha Awards this year.
Oh, no. Your video's gone all weird again. Oh, we fixed it.
Back?
Yep.
Yes. So I thought I'd have a little bit of a theme with my photos for tonight. So this one, like through travel photography, like, we learn different sort of principles with landscape and cities and architecture. And I kind of like to take, techniques and cross them over into different genres. And you don't usually see street photography shot as long exposures like this. This is a 6-second exposure from the rooftop of the marketplace in Niswa, and it's predominantly men wearing the white outfits. And I thought I wanted to try and capture some of the movement and some of the life that was actually in the marketplace in the morning. And it just try and freezing a moment in time. And it's something a little bit different from anyone who's shooting on their phone or shooting handheld. Put an ND filter on. I think it was like a 6-stop, and basically shot it at f/22, 6 seconds, and just lined it up and shot it.
So is this on have you got like some hardware for this, or are you just sitting on a railing or something like that to get it framed up?
Just sitting on a tripod head on the rooftop.
Mm-hmm.
So had to bribe someone to get up there, which is something that not everyone can do. And yeah.
Do you have to speak the local lingo to get a bribe in, or can you just wave some money around?
I think Cash is international. That speaks a lot of languages.
It's a fact.
So yeah, that's my first shot for sort of street photography, because I think that street photography is such a such a curious sort of genre of photography that not everyone understands what it actually is by definition.
Did people were people aware of you shooting up there, or were people pretty much oblivious?
Pretty much oblivious, because you're not in their line of sight. So I've been to Oman a few times to do workshops, and they are a very welcoming culture. They do welcome photography and tourism into the country. They are it's becoming more like a commonplace. And yeah, it's people aren't afraid to pose for photos, but also part of street photography is you want that candid aspect of life photography.
Question.
Yep.
How do you compare it to Morocco? Because I found Morocco very nah, don't take a photo of me at all, and you got to kind of get to know them to take a photo. There, you're saying it's real easy. What's your comparison?
Morocco. Okay, so when I photographed in Morocco, we usually have authentic Moroccan guides, and they usually would sort of help us to either ask for permission to photograph someone in the store, or act as sort of models. My next shot is this one in Chefchaouen, and that's our guide Saeed. So this is my take on Cartier-Bresson, and in terms of sort of symmetry. And I kind of looked down down this stairwell, and I thought, okay, I love the symmetry, but if you photograph it without a person in it, it's just missing something. You kind of need that element of person in an environment, to actually make it sort of breathe and just live.
Yeah, I think that's part of is something that people often sneer at about. I guess the Instagram thing of people always being in the shot, but having a human figure in the frame can it definitely adds that sense of scale and almost giving you a what do you call it? In movies it's an audience surrogate, right? That could be me.
The feeling.
I've walked around Chefchaouen first thing in the morning, and people think, okay, I want to get out there before all the tourists are out, and I want to photograph the town for what it is. But when there's nobody out there, it's just like a ghost town. There is sort of we're getting a kick out of all these isolation shots around all these really busy cities now that they're just completely empty. But
Mhm.
in terms of, they're just, to me, they're like, they can work, but also, sometimes it's nice to have like an old person to just give a bit of perspective to the shop.
Beauty. Yeah, the color is amazing in this one.
Thank you.
Mm.
I just
Do you
saw
want to go
Craig.
another one, or?
I just saw
Yeah,
Craig in the
let's roll
comments,
on.
so I was like, "Hi, Craig. Hi,
Uh,
Casey." Sorry.
let's roll on. Yeah, that's beauty.
This is Cambodia with the Giving Lands trip last year with Paul Pichugan.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
we basically love to, like, I've been doing workshops with the Giving Lands for a few years now, in terms of we go to developing countries and basically do some humanitarian work. We might like work with an orphanage. We might like work with a refuge. In Cambodia, we work with Anjali Children's School, and we take a bunch of people into Siem Reap, and we do some like an humanitarian work, and we go and photograph the temples and the river and also the local markets. So this was basically our day of walking around the markets in Siem Reap, and it's black and white, really picks up on contrast and details. And to me, street photography is about finding either the environment and waiting for the person to walk into it, or finding the person of interest and waiting for them to to be on a frame that I like to take a photo of. And here it's kind of just watching this lady work in the detail of all the eggs around her, and all the light was actually on the eggs. It's a series of photos which basically I haven't shown many people these
Are they-
photos, because it's not my usual thing.
So these are all eggs.
Eggs.
Are they huge eggs or is she
It's
tiny?
huge.
They
Yeah.
look like emu eggs or something.
Yeah.
Are they just chicken eggs?
Like, what kind of bird laid those?
I'm going to assume it's not emu eggs or something prehistoric. I'm going to assume they were chickens.
Wow. She must.
Crazy.
Maybe it's just the perspective is it's really messing with me. They're so, yeah, but they're
Hey,
so
I haven't
striking in black and
photoshopped
white.
them. I haven't enlarged
no,
the
I-
eggs. Okay.
Look, it's all trust. I just it's a wild shot. So forgive me, I'm not super familiar with the Giving Lens. Is that so that it's basically that the basic premise is that you there's always a sort of I don't know, you go in and you do some public service work while you're there to sort of give back to the community as you travel?
Sure. So the Giving Lens is an organisation that was started by Colby Brown, one of the
Mhm.
Sony global artisans,
Mm.
and basically it's Colby's organisation, which basically is about giving back. So in terms of using the photography in terms of promoting a cause, or
Mhm.
being able to to give our time to teaching kids how to photograph. So Cambodia specifically, we go into Anjali Orphanage, and basically we teach them photography skills for 2 to 3 days, and it gives them another means of actually being able to see that, okay, if I want to pursue this as a career, I can make a
Mhm.
living out of this instead of selling postcards on the side of the road out the front of the temple. It basically is another means of using their creative skills to to possibly make a living out of it, and then sharing that that knowledge with other kids coming up, so they can support themselves.
Definitely something I should have known. Thanks for helping me out there. Brett Harris is asking what your go-to camera kit is for travel.
I'm on the A7R4 and the A7 III right now, and I usually have for lenses 16-35, 55 prime, and the 100 to 400. I've never had a 24 to 70 in my life. which is
Wow.
strange
Is that a
for a
point of
travel
pride?
photographer to say. It kind of is now, yeah. I'll get that tattoo one day.
Mine's never lost a lens cap ever, so I
Oh wow!
need
Nice,
wood now.
nice.
But yeah,
Yeah,
You're not
absolutely. You
trying.
do. That's quite the badge of pride. All right, Andy, what else you got for us?
So this was shot on the Sony rugby trip last year with
Mhm.
a few of the Sony guys on our trip in October, and it's not as good as Pat's geisha shot in Kyoto, but you can't do that shot anymore. But essentially, we're walking around the bars in
Is the golden guy?
Shibuya. No, that's Shinjuku. This is Shibuya. This is just under the train bridge on the other side from the crossing.
Mhm.
And I was essentially just walking around with some of the guys, and I just said, look, just be on the lookout for, as I said, look out for people, and and look out for compositions where it works. And there's this little old lady who's peering out the door at me, and I thought, well, can I take your photo? And she didn't move, and I thought, okay, I'm taking your photo, and it just lines up well. So if you also notice, that perspective, it's 16 by 10. So
Mm.
I've put this on Instagram before, where it's 1 by 1, and you just basically see the lady's face peering out. But I kind of like the letterbox look to my images, and the next shot I'll show you it's a bit of storytelling for me, because the thing is you just get a bit more of perspective of the environment when you're doing street photography.
The context really adds something to it. I love that whole letterbox look too, and I do that a lot with my second account. But everything is letterbox. I totally agree. The context makes such a big difference.
Yeah.
I love the guy on the left. Even though he's facing away, but having that warm little nook off to the side kind of tells you so much about where you are and what's going on.
Yeah, you just know that whole lane is just full of these little hole in the wall, little bars, and that just shows you a little glimpse into what this lady is looking out from.
Love it.
So the flip side to that, in terms of picking a certain subject and making it really stand out, I do love complex images where you look at an image and you have to work your way around it. And this is Harajuku, on Takashita Street. And I just love being able to look at the entire image and storytell with it. And the first thing that basically drew me to this image, when I was sort of I was wandering around with a workshop, is that there's this Nick pillow on the wall.
Mm.
And I thought, that's a bit odd. So the thing is, I just I was standing there looking at it, and then these two guys just basically wandered towards me, and it kind of, I've been watching a bit of the Beastie Boys videos of late, and they look just the matching outfits, and they're about to bust out in the music video.
Yep. Start doing sabotage.
But there's body movement, and it was just there's just so much storytelling in this image, and I just it's not what I'm usually known for, but I doing travel photography, you just basically shoot everything, and you appreciate everything that you do.
Yeah, it's got a real kind of Where's Wally quality to it, in a good way.
Yeah.
All right, I think we'll have time for one or two more, and then it's time to give Stefan the spotlight.
Oh, please don't.
This is my last image, if you can see it.
Beauty, yeah.
So this is just sunset in Tokyo, and finding a little bit of a quieter place to try and photograph. And pretty sure Pat knows this area as well.
Were you just walking, or is this a room you're shooting from, or did you plan it? Or
it's from a bridge.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we basically going to Japan a few times throughout the year, get to like know a lot of local photographers, and they kind of like point you in the right direction. So we're not scouting and wasting too much time like when we are there on the ground running workshops.
Yeah. I always love shows like this because when you go to Tokyo, you just think like, oh, is this place just like so packed? And, if you took a Western city and you just put this many people in it, would it look like this? And then you go to the suburbs and it's just like, no, like they just build differently here. Like everything is like, it's a whole different concept of what a building should look like.
Mm-hmm.
That is awesome. Thank you very much for sharing, Andy.
Cheers, Andy.
Stefan, mate.
Okay, I'm a little bit nervous. All right.
Nah.
How long I got?
Yeah, I don't know. Call it. Look, if you're not done in 20 minutes, I'm going to tell you to wrap it up.
Okay, sweet, cool. All right, I'll share my screen. Entire screen done. All right, I'll switch that over. Am I good? Can you see my screen?
Give me the all clear. We're good to go.
Cool. So pretty much my background is shooting like sports, like that sort of thing. So you may have seen that on the Sony Scene page. I think that shot. So a bit of travel. My sort of aim is like, I love shooting landscapes, but my aim would be to try create more of my own by putting subject. So it just gives you more control to actually create, like, I don't know, like I love a shot like this, but I want to give it more, and someone else can go and take that photo, but I want to, give it my own. So by adding, say an image like this, so like you've got this amazing texture in the background, and that was just, I don't know, I think I sat at this temple for about 3 hours just waiting for an interesting character to come along, and I think he was praying for a while, and then I just try to communicate, and then I eventually asked to take his portrait. Sometimes they just say no, and then that's your 3 hours done, or however, but this guy was kind enough to like, yep. And they try to communicate a bit more, so you just like, I don't really know what more to say, but okay, sweet. But yeah, so that's the kind of aim of my sort of travel images, is to give a sort of story behind it. And so this is, I've never really shown this photo ever to anyone, but this was shot in the RX-1. So that was a trip I did 3 months of just taking the RX-1, the original one, and nothing else. And I took a pair of board shorts and a singlet and just traveled around to, I think, 11 different countries. And I was just walking down the street and I saw this guy in a boss-ass suit, and I was like, oh my God, like just shot it, and just the way he's holding his rope, just like, I'm boss. So I don't know, it was just one of those shots. And again, I was just walking through India.
What country was that previous one?
That was the southern Himalayas of India, Shimla or Manali, around there.
No way.
And
I totally would have picked it for like somewhere in like Eastern Bloc or something. Like,
yeah, I think it might be Manali. So there's a bit of Tibetan is on the border of that. So there's I think another one of my photos in there will be kind of along that sort of league. But yeah, a shot like that, like, I don't know, I like the alleyways, but again, it just happened that I was walking past, and I don't know, this, I'm not trying to like, say buy this camera, but like the reason I was using the RX-1 was just because it had the silent shutter, and it just made it perfect. And this was back when I don't think, you can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but it was the A7. Did that have full silent shutter, or was it?
No, we brought that in around it would have been original A7S would have been first, and then we sort of rolled it out to the 7 Mark II and a lot of cameras after that.
So I was just loving that, because you could use that in weddings or when you're on commercials behind like the big cameras, the TVC cameras. So that way you could actually shoot it would be dead silent. And I was shooting this from the hip, and when you're kind of going to some of these very touristic places, they've been taking their photos all the time, and they'd like no photo, but this guy just happened. what I did is, because I don't think the RX1 had continuous focus, or it might not have been as quick as the A7.
Yeah, it was
so,
not the snappiest.
yeah, so I'd pre-focus it and just guess it, and then I had it in my hip and just shot it, and I was just pretty stoked that I actually got it. Yeah, so that's the kind of travel image. So I'm just going to scroll through. So this is another sort of thing, is action sports.
Did he live?
Yeah. So the next shot is the sequence. So if I zoom in there,
Yeah.
this is Connor McFarlane. So yeah, so part of why I love working with athletes is you get to collaborate with one another. This one I didn't actually collaborate, so it's not a perfect example because he built the jump, the landing, and everything. And he's like, "Hey, come shoot this with me." And we'd been working over years, so he's an absolute legend. And just he only hit it once, and he lived to tell the tale. But another dude, several years later, tried to do it, and he broke his pelvis, both of his ankles, and everything like that. So there's a lot of risk, and so they choose one photographer, and I was pretty stoked he chose me. I'm just going to scroll through a bunch of different images. So this was on a road trip, and that's just kind of trying to tell the story of, we've just had an absolute mare of a time with the Land Rover, and we're sinking away the night, playing guitar and just telling stories of other disasters on the road trip.
This shot is one that I've seen you do,
Nice.
like a lot of different variations of. Like you sort of, kind of, you'll find different backgrounds, that sort of stuff. Like, what's your perfect setup for this one?
This, if I reset the image, going back one moment. Yeah, so it's actually quite colorful. So in between full darkness and sunset, there's that really vibrant, colorful blue. So I don't know, I try to remove it a little bit, just to make it a little bit more like real life. So when I edit my photos, my goal is to make it as realistic as possible and emphasize my subject just that little bit. So now I'm looking at it now, I'm kind of not liking the little left driftwood because it's a bit too bright. I want my subject, my main draw to the eye is the subject. So I'll move it across the next one. So that's just a chill shot actually. Okay, so that sort of one. Symmetry, and then your eye draws to the monk crossing the bridge, and that's in Myanmar. Wait, what was the question you originally asked? Because I go off in tangents.
No, it's all good. I was just asking about like what your setup was for that.
Oh yeah,
kind of shot. Like, what's your ideal for that one?
That one. So again, just
if you wanted to get like your perfect like people playing guitar around a campfire in Blue Hour, like what do you want in the background? Like what's your perfect setup?
That would kind of be waiting for the ultimate amount of light, because if I left that, say, 10 minutes later, that sky would be too dark, and then I'd have to expose it a little bit more, and then your fire will be over the top. So a little kind of trick is, if you just having that fine balance, it takes a little bit of practice, because I get a few direct messages saying, how do you get this? How do you that fire that's too bright is going to be overpowering for the rest of the shot.
Can you take that back 5 seconds, Steph? We lost you for just a moment there.
Yeah.
You said, I got a lot of questions, and then cut out.
Yeah. About how do you get the exposure of the fire in the sky? And by having a smaller flame, it means that it doesn't overpower the actual image and the exposure. And I've got, I'll flick over to that now, just like a live edit of some other images. If I go to raw temps or temp raws. So this is, I've not actually looked at any of these shots at all. This is just straight off the camera from the other night. So the day before lockdown, I snuck up the hill behind my hut.
What would you say?
I just shot some stars, and so this is, I just slept in a tiny little tent or kind of like a tarp. This is a rough, so to get an idea, like you can crank these files like crazy. So that's the sort of tent. And if you obviously make it too bright, so I've got a mixture of different exposures that I flick between, because the fire will be too bright there, so it makes the sky too dark. So by having it a lot less, then you can get the exposure of the sky in the background. If I flick to that one, if that makes sense. So it's just trying to find that fine balance, so you can tell enough of the story that you've got your background that's telling your story as well as what your subject's doing. And it's actually a self-portrait. Well, that's not actually a self-portrait, but I'd go jump in that once I've got the perfect flame. But obviously, because it's a flame and it's burning through wood, it doesn't exactly last. So it took several few shots, but I'm just trying to get creative at that time. So this is usually when I kind of go through my own imagery. I'll just hit tab so that comes up. I'd go on and I'd flick between them all, and as soon as I see something I like, I'd hit a 1 star. And then that would go down. You can see the bottom thumbnails, and that'll be a 1 star. If I like it like quite a lot, it'll be a 2 star, and 3 star, so on. So then I'd go through and then I'd go and filter that. Because I kind of know that at the end of my shot would be my final sort of photo. I don't ever shoot portrait apart from this, which is shot on the 20. I just pointed at my screen, realizing that you're not actually behind me. But this is shot on the 24mm, but I don't really like to shoot portraits, mainly because it's easier to crop a landscape for print than it is to crop a portrait to a landscape. What I've actually done is shot a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right. So what I might try to do is make it a landscape photo from that. So I've got a little bit of playing around to do there. But what I've got, so for a live edit, I've got my own presets that I've kind of made from just my timeline. Oh, that actually looks kind of cool. I'm just going to save that. But I don't do a hell of a lot. But if I did that, it would be just cranking. Usually I always kind of shoot it a little bit darker, knowing that I can get some more out of it. And when I went from Canon years and years ago, I had to relearn my editing style, because originally you could only move about like that sort of thing, and you could move your darks there and it'll be just so grainy. And then when I switched to Sony, I was just like, how do I actually edit a photo again? So I had to relearn how I edit it, and most of the time it will be that's pretty much what I do to the majority of my photos, and then I mix up with a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and that's kind of, and I've eventually made presets. So from that's kind of a preset there that I've made, and that one I may do no blues, which is a little bit of variation, and that's mainly in the tone curves, which will be in the reds, and I may pull that red down a little bit like that, and then it's a little bit more green. That's kind of pretty much all I do. I don't touch those unless I need to. If it's my error that I've made it a little bit weak in the sharpness, that I've out of focus, I might crank that a little bit, or I might get the brush and I might then crank out the sharpness and then put it over me, but obviously not on that sort of image. So yeah, that's me just checking out my first images of that. I shot on the RX0. This is embarrassing. It's out of focus.
Is that a compound bow?
Yeah. So we climbed up. We got up at 5:30 in the morning and hiked up this mountain. And so again, I haven't seen any of these images at all. So that's the sort of edit I'd roughly do, and I always take my contrast down as I crunch my blacks just that little bit, and then usually what I'd do is I drop a pin there, and crank that up just a little bit. And the aim to do why I do that is to just make it a little bit more close to real life, because for me, I don't see blacks as completely black. They're always like a faded light. So that's kind of, this is not really a good example of what I'm doing, because that's not a final result is what I do. Because for me, I look at that and that's a really dirty image. The contrast, so I'm trying to do this as quick as possible. But again, that's not exactly how I do it. But I'm going to reset that because it's getting embarrassing. But yeah, so again, I'd kind of pick and choose knowing what is. So that's well up there. But I'll go back to my collection.
Who are you shooting with there?
That was so down the hill from my hut is my uncle's house, and he's got a flatmate there. So that was kind of my bubble for the lockdown. It was my uncle and we got out a couple of days after lockdown that we're actually allowed to go and do exercise. So yeah, so that's.
Is he bow hunting or is he just?
Yeah. So we got a deer that day, and then had to lug it out. So that was quite cool. So that was actually up there, up over that mountain, and then down the next valley. And yeah, and that's just him just practicing on my camera, taking a photo of me fishing. So yeah, so it was actually quite a mission. That was 5:30 and got back at 3. So yeah,
that's huge.
Back to collection. So, I love this photo, but check out Craig Perry. I know he's. I just want to be like, oh, check out my turtle photo.
Just getting on your turf there, Craig.
But yeah, I had to go through and actually remove some of my selection of Japan because I saw Pat K had some Japan. I was okay, I'm going to bring something different. But so one of my sponsors, Will and Bear. So I shoot a heat for them, and we get on the road a heat. So these are sort of photos, and I love working with natural light and primes, and just playing with flares. So 85, I don't actually use that a heap, but I was loving on that sort of photos. But 35 is my favorite. So I'm going to try slow down my amount of talking I do. But 3514, absolutely love that. Original edit, I can show you.
Hey, before you get onto that, Steph, I've just got a question from the chat. Mr. Jubes is asking, have you tried using bulb mode to sort of manually control your shutter speed to suit the light with any of the stuff that you do?
No, I kind of don't touch bulb unless I'm doing like a massive star trail, but I don't have the patience to sit there for about half an hour. But if I shoot stars, it would be maximum 30 seconds. If you do any more than like 15, you kind of start to see a little bit of the movement. If I go back to 10 raws, I can go down to the stars and see if I've got metadata. 24. Oh, that's not okay. I'm just making it confusing. But there might be something that's got 30 seconds. So info in the top left, you can see that's for 15 seconds. And hopefully it's actually in focus. Excuse that. So no, it's pretty good, but as soon as you kind of get past 25, 30 seconds, depending also on your length of your lens. So say if you're shooting 200, those stars will be moving a huge amount. So you're gonna have to crank your ISO and have a much sharper, a wider aperture. So yeah, I don't really touch bulb. I kind of already have the settings in mind. Kind of as wide as the lens can go and stop it down maybe 1 or 2 clicks. So it's like if I'll make my counter F2 mainly because of vignetting. Because if you with vignette, if you enable profile corrections and you might be cranking some of these highlights and shadows, that grain will be starting to pop quite a lot. So when stars, that's kind of a vital thing. And if you're boosting up your ISO to 4000, you kind of got to be careful. Because say I just do the extreme, just for example, you'll start to see the grain here is worse there than in here, just because out your profile, it's a little bit darker. So hopefully that's some tips for stars. But I'll try to corrections. But yeah, any questions, just bring them up, and then I'm happy to answer those because I can't see that as I'm bringing through these photos.
Yeah, we'll chuck them in.
But yeah, so I was recently in Mongolia again, or not recently. It was actually in November. Now it's lockdown's gone quite quick. So I was over there revisiting a family I stayed with 3 years prior to this, and it was quite emotional. There's a lot emotional trip back, but a lot went on that time. But these are sort of travel images. I might just pop that a bit larger. 24 mil. So that there was actually a new one for me, the 24-14, because I don't think I used it. I think I got it just before that trip. And my favorite is actually 35-14. And I actually shot, I think, 80% of my photos during that time on the 24 mil. It was just perfect for it. I don't know how to explain it, but I was just like, oh my God, this photo. So that actually took over my use of the 16-30 f4. And tangent again, I use the f4 over the 2.8 just due to the size. And it's just a compromise I take. So whenever I'm traveling, I try to take the lightest kit possible. Again, so that's the 24-14. If I just do a little demo of what it was before. And what do we got? Is it going to load? I think that is the before. Oh no, sorry, that's exported to DNG, so I don't think there's much more unless I reset it. That's the before. So not a heap of difference in a way, other than no, actually there's a little bit. So again,
very different toning.
Sorry, what was that?
Just the tone, like the shadows are.
Yeah, more. So that would have been done from one of my homemade presets, but again, so my exposures are usually a little bit dark, so I pop that up a little bit. Highlights and shadows, the reason I crank those down is to get a little bit more overall sort of tonal range, and then it brings saturation a lot more to majority of the sort of photos. So if you did the opposite, it's real contrast. You lose a lot of that color, whereas I want to bring in more color, but if you had your contrast up, it will be too intense. So the reason I do that is to bring down your contrast, and then you bring down your blacks just to compensate that. And that's the sort of curve. So I don't know, if I was to mix that up, I'd put more contrast, but I don't know. My sort of edit style is changing constantly. It might be too faded, and I might be way up. So this might be a completely different editing style to what other people do, and they may use their blacks. So that's just kind of that sort of look. I need to change that back. Oh, I'll do it later. But so yeah, again, looking at light. So I'm just going to go spill off as much info as I can for all the viewers out there. It's not always exactly what you see. So, sorry, I just clicked D on that one. So what you'd actually be seeing in there would be something like that. So trying to look at your image and see what else you can capture. So by just knocking it back down there, my only regret now is because it's got its cap on, it would be quite cool having that off so he's looking right in the eyes. But I don't know, that's still, for me, quite a powerful image.
We had a question earlier. I might throw it out to everyone on the stream, but just asking when you decide to make an image black and white, like when do you make that call?
Oh, I'll start it. Can I?
Yeah, please.
Wait, okay, cool. So something I kind of figured out myself, or I don't know if I've been taught, I think I just figured it out, was my aim in photography is to shoot for black and white and color as a bonus. And that's what I kind of teach people. So for me here's a black and white. If I just click V to get out some color, for me that doesn't do as much. The yellow is too distracting. The blue over here is too distracting. You can desaturate those and use that sort of thing. But for me, I don't know, like if you're getting into photography, you always find when you put your photos into black and white, they'll be like, oh, sweet, this is so much cooler. But then some people concentrate a lot on their reds, and then they bring in more of this. So my aim is always to have a simplistic photo, same as what I think Pat K, were you talking about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Simplify.
Yeah, it's just simple like this sort of thing. So this is again for Will and Bear. So and this is not staged at all. This is after we crashed the truck and pulled it out of a ditch, and we're celebrating with drinks. So that's if I change that, this is not perfect, but all I click is V to just get an idea of what it would be like for black and white. And the reason black and white is just simplistic, and the contrast, say like their skin tones against the forest in the background, which is darker, or his legs against the truck, or it's just simplifying things so you're not getting as distracting. So if I'm just pointing my screen again. So if I use the mouse, so that little grass that's distracting. So it's also color. It's not just the color contrast. It's the color contrast as well as not just the light contrast. So I'd kind of, if it looks good in black and white, then that's amazing. If it looks good in color as well, that's even better. So I don't know, that's my answer, but that's the question answered for me, but hopefully others have some input.
Andy, have you got any advice for picking black and white or color?
Yeah, so like I basically like to put it in the black and white when I want to focus on contrast and take away like in a color as a distraction. So I don't know if you can see. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, throw it up.
Can I flick back?
So
we got stuff. Hang on a second.
So in terms of like that shot that I showed you before, in terms of the egg, the lady with the eggs, that's the color version.
There we go.
So that's the color version, and that's the black and white version. So in terms of like sort of the contrast, it just basically drives the viewer's eye to the detail of where I want them to look, just of the egg, and not so much being distracted by any colors.
Yeah, such a great example of color being a distraction, because her clothing is so poppy and yeah.
So you take that away, and it just goes on to the detail of where the light is on the eggs.
For sure. Beautiful. Stefan, did you have any more that you wanted to share on the stream?
I'll just switch across.
Probably wrap up in a couple of minutes. Maybe a couple more.
So maybe tips for other people viewing is not always just a bang sharp image. So this is held in my mouth with the camera. So I have a little mouth mount, which is used for, say, the action cam, which I was shooting at the time, but I wanted to control my shutter speed a bit better. So I attached the A7 something at the time, and shot that in my mouth and controlled the shutter. So I didn't have I didn't have a fisheye at the time. So the best thing was the 16mm, which is still not wide enough. So I'm actually looking like a bit of a dork, leaning back, holding that camera in my mouth, just to kind of get that shot. So I don't know. For viewers, again, so going back to this shot, it's not, if I shot that if I shot that quite quick, so like 1/100th of a second or quicker, the motorbike will be still, or the person will be sharp, and there won't be as much blur, but it was just at that moment just waiting for that perfect gap, so then your concentration will be on this person just sitting there alone. I don't know. I can scroll through and figure out some sort of.
I think that's probably actually a good place to wrap it up, guys. It's we've been an hour and 20 minutes, so it's been a good length of stream. And look, thanks very much for jumping on. It's been really good chatting. I feel like I've got some really good insight. I kind of feel a bit fired up. I kind of want to go out and take a trip somewhere now. So thanks for that. But yeah, look, maybe look, I know we've got links for you guys in the in the description. So if you want to check out any more of these guys' work, We'll have links back to them. Anything you guys want to plug that you're working on at the moment that's cool?
Cheers to Joe for letting me use his room while I'm on the road, because I know he
Joe.
probably wants to get into his bed being 10 o'clock tonight. You
Thank you,
guys,
sponsored by Joe. This program brought to you by Joe. Pat, Andy?
I'm in the process of redoing all my digital products for like travel related guides and stuff like that. So if you need places, or you're looking to go somewhere after the coronavirus, obviously, there'll be a whole bunch of articles on my site to help you out, and free resources in that. So check it out.
Brilliant. Andy?
I've spent the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks learning how to edit my images in a new technique. So I've been using Luminar and Aurora instead of using Nik software, which I've been using for 6 years. So I've enjoyed the challenge of actually learning how to edit differently and something that's actually current and modern.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. You have to. I should have got you to talk about that on stream. Anyway, that's
time.
awesome. Next time, yeah. Go on, hit us with it.
Yeah, so on an actual serious note, after watching last week, I think it was last week's about the Prince with Craig and the crew, I was kind of like, all right, I'm going to sell prints now. So I've started looking at that, but the only thing holding me back is tax, dealing with international taxes and stuff like that. So that's pretty much what I've been working on. But then I've forgotten what I was going to say. Yeah, sweet, cool. But yeah, watch the YouTube.
Once you get your prints on, we'll put a link in the description.
Yeah. The YouTube with Mongolia clips and tips and all that.
Oh yeah.
Because
amazing stuff. Definitely check it out.
Enjoy.
All right, guys. We're going to sign off. Thank you very much for tuning in, everyone, and we'll see you next week.